That was good. It was good. Um, Shalom, shalom. Yeah, I know y'all see the title. Um, what is marriage according to God, right? Because we gotta understand that we as Israelites, we come from a, a, a Eastern culture, right? And on the Eastern, a lot of ancient Eastern cultures, they practice what we will call arranged marriages, right? Where the parents already, have, established for the most part, not all the time, but for the most part, who their children's going to marry, right? And then it moves like that, So, because we have being on this Western world and following this Western culture that we've been, a part of for the last 400 something 500 years. Um, so they have a different way of think. They have um, a different way of how they go about these things. And so because we got to understand, like, because in our culture, because in the Western world, put it like this: in the Western world, it's they have, you know, like, they tell you to go have sex with, many different people that you want, and then when you finally feel like you want to get married, then go get married. But in our culture, there's no such thing as boyfriend and girlfriend, because in our culture, sex is marriage. We're going to prove that through the scriptures that sex is the act of marriage, right? Sure, you can have a ceremony and do all that cool stuff, but once you lie down with that woman or that man, that becomes your husband and that becomes your wife, according to our culture and how God set it up. You know, so because for the most part over here, what they get a marriage certificate and all that cool stuff. And I know this is, especially for our women, this is like a very unpopular thing, right? Because our women like to have the Beyonce style type wedding, you know, and all that cool stuff. Get the marriage certificate, and then, truthfully, they've been hearing that men is not much, you know, it's not worth the salt that go on the bread all their life. So then they look at it as a backup. I'm not saying all women, so don't quote me on this, but they look at it as a backup plan. So if something goes wrong, they can always take half. So but like I said, don't. I mean, I'm just teasing, but at the same time, we have a different culture, and according to the Bible, marriage is, it's not how we think it is on this Western, part of the world. So we're gonna go through the scriptures and see how what God deemed what is marriage, and we're gonna see that sex is marriage. And so it's a topic that, like I said, we sometimes go to different topics. Like, sometimes we get into Bible prophecies and how things is playing out in the world, and we try to show how that goes with, fit with the Bible. But this book has like over 80 something chapters with thousands and thousands of different things that we can go into. So today we're just gonna go into the whole marriage, idea of marriage in the Bible, right? So without further ado, what I'm saying, of course, all praises to the Most High. We do so in His only begotten Son, Yahweh Shai, right? So we're gonna get into this thing, and like I said, so hopefully, we have a better understanding of what God deemed as marriage, because like I said, we go to church, they use words like sex, sex outside of marriage, or sex before marriage, kids out of wedlock. So we're gonna find out that there's no such thing as kids out of wedlock and sex out of marriage. Because number one, the Bible tells you that kids is a blessing from God. Kids are a gift from God, right? So let's get into it. So now this we're gonna start off with Deuteronomy 25:5. So you know how we do sometimes. We might start somewhere around the conclusion of the matter, then we work our way through the things that led us to draw to this conclusion, right? So this Deuteronomy 25:5. It says, now we're gonna start right here. So it says, if a brethren dwell together, if brethren dwell together and one of them die, no, matter of fact, we'll, we'll, let's go to this one. Let's go to 22. We'll get that one. Let's start at 22. 22, 22 and 15. So it says 22 and 15. It says, then shall boom, 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 boom. Then shall the father of the damsel of the mother take. Let me start at 14. It says, and give a occasion of speech. No, I'm start at 13. My bad. I'm start at 13. And it says, if any man take a wife and go into her, and he hate her. So to go into them, that's euphemism for sex. All right. So we're gonna run into that word a lot. Go into or to know, those would be euphemism for having sex, right? So it says, if a man take a wife and go into her and hate her and give occasional uh and give occasional her speech against her and bring up a evil name upon her, say and say, I took this woman and then I came to found it and I found her not a maid. So because like I said, like, oftentimes, like I said, the woman that the parents will give to the man, she haven't been touched by a man before. She's, what we'll call a virgin. So in this case, it's saying that if a man, uh, receives a wife from someone, from her parents, and then he find out that she's not a virgin, or he thinks she's not a virgin, right? And hold on, real quick, let me just. So then she thinks she's not a virgin, right? Then it says, and give occasion of a speech against her and bring her up a evil name upon her. So now we do this and sometimes in our community. So and we have a law against this. So basically what they're saying is a man cannot call a woman a hoe or anything like that unless she's really actually a hoe. Because if she's not a hoe, then and you find out and you just out here just calling this woman a hoe after you done had sex with her, then the parents is allowed to beat you. Whoop your ass basically. And then uh, it says, but we're gonna get to it. It says, and give occasion to speak against her, bringing up an evil name upon her, and say, I took this woman, and when I came to her and found she was not a maid, then the father of the damsel and the mother take and bring forth the tokens of the damsel's virginity unto the elders of the city in the gate. So then the parents will have to show and prove that this woman was a virgin when they gave her to you, right? So, and that usually come in a form of, cause usually when a woman hymen breaks, she might, have some, not to be all graphic, she might bleed a little bit. So, like I said, this was the culture that we practice, and of course, you know, nowadays it's very rare to find a person that is a virgin. But this is just, one of the laws that, how we circumvent this thing. So now the parents will have to show the sheet or whatever the case may be with the blood on it to show them that look, she was a virgin when this happened, right? So then, in that point, the man would be lying, and because he's going around calling her a hoe, and then it's against our laws because we're supposed to treat our women with respect and dignity. So if you're going around, giving this woman a bad name, calling her all types of names in the streets, then it's not true. Then then it says, And the damsel father shall say unto the elders, I gave my daughter unto this man to wife, and he hated her. And lo, and lo, he have given occasion of speech against her, saying, I found not a daughter, a maid, and yet these tokens of my daughter's virginity. And they shall spread the cloth before the elders of the city, and the elders of the city should take the man and chastise him. So chastising, that's a beating right there. So not only do the parents get to beat you, then the officials that presided over the case, they get to beat you because now you spreading a rumor about this woman that's not true. So just imagine if we had that law in our community that, a man can't go around calling his woman all types of hoes unless she really is a hoe. That would create a different atmosphere and more respect amongst our people, when it comes to dealing with each other, right? So let's jump to Matthew real quick. Let's go to Matthew 22 and 13. Boom, boom, boom. Then it says, that's the one I want, right? Mm-hmm. Hold on, make sure. Hold on, my bad. Let's boom, boom, boom. Hold on, we're gonna get back to Matthew because I thought that was the one I want, but no, that's my bad. Let's jump to Deuteronomy 22 real quick though. All right, we can go there. Let's go to 22 and 28 real quick. So we see like one law concerning the fact that like I said, we're not just allowed to just blatantly disrespect our women, and because if we do, then like I said, there'll be consequences where, the family can jump you, essentially, and beat you up for just saying some stuff. And we know that that stuff happened now. You know what I'm saying? Like, what was that movie, The Wood, where Stacy was asking oh boy um about his sister. Then he's like, "What you think my sister a hoe or something?" Right? So, even though it's somewhat a different context, but you can see, you know, the idea of that law. You know what I'm saying? Because, the disrespect, you know, this woman or this family, like I said, and it's not true. That family can beat you, up, like we just read. So let's get like I said, Deuteronomy 22 and 28. Then it says, if a man finds a damsel, uh, and a damsel, of course, is a young lady. Then it says, if a man find a damsel that is a virgin, which is not betrothed, meaning she's not promised. Because remember, I started off by saying in our culture, the parents will promise, their children to each other. But in this situation, and I said it's not all the time, but that's generally how stuff goes. But in this situation, the parents didn't promise their daughter to anybody. She's just a young lady, and she's not promised to anybody. And oftentimes too, like, because the word virgin, how we use virgin in the Hebrew culture, virgin just mean a young woman, like between the 18 and 25. Just mean a young woman, right? So it's not necessarily talking about never having sex before. Because you're gonna see this word virgin being, thrown into these different things. But so damsel is a woman, virgin is a young lady, that's old enough to get married, right? Um, because it would be, it'll specify if it's a person have not laid with a person, right? So then it says, if a man find a damsel that is a virgin, which is not betrothed, and lay hold on her, and lie with her, and they be found, right? So let's stop right there. So it's that he laid hold on it. That means just like how you be at the club and you meet a woman, you be talking to her, then you end up getting her number, then you go back and you brag to your friends, like, oh yeah, I just snatched up this chick from the club. I mean, did you really snatch her up, or did you just got her information so y'all can contact each other at a later time? So that's what it means to lay hold. Then it says, and lie with her, and they be found, meaning people noticing y'all together. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so now y'all looking like a couple, right? Y'all in a relationship, right? Then it says, then the man should lay, then the man should lay with her. Then the man that lay with her shall give unto the damsel's father 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife, because he has humbled her, and he may not put her away all of his days. Meaning, you have to make her once you lay with her, then you have to, and then if she's a virgin, meaning she, in this context, meaning she haven't had sex before, then you have to pay a dowry, a virgin price. You'll give, you know, to the father, right? And I know to y'all it might sound strange, like sound like the parents is pimping the daughters out. It's not like that, because, like I said, we're dealing with arranged marriages culture, and marriage has always been about business arrangements and political arrangements. Because if you have a certain amount of property and you want to make sure it stays within the family, so then you will, or somebody else has some wealth, so you want to bring the wealth together and make it multiply and accumulate. So so then you'll do that. So and then by this woman being a what we'll call a virgin, she haven't been with a man before. So then is a what they would call a high value woman, right? So then you would pay the dowry, which would be 50 shekels, and so doing but then also if she's you know have had sex before, she been married, but she got divorced, or she was married and now she's a widow. So you don't have to pay anything. It's just that dowry is that one time thing. That's only if she's a virgin, in the sense of not having been with a man before, right? So we see the first instance that the act of sex makes her your wife. We didn't see anything about no ceremony, no marriage certificate, no ring or anything like that. They had sex. People seeing them around the hood. They hanging out together more and more. They get back to the father. Now you got to tell the father, like, hey, me and your daughter did the do, and I'm here to pay the dowry to let you know this. I'm taking her as a wife, right? So, and the reason you do that because the father, he could have somebody in mind that he wanted to promise his daughter to. You know what I'm saying? So then all of a sudden you meet her somewhere, you spitting your game to her, you running your game on her, then she fall for it, then y'all end up sleeping together. So now whatever, you know, arrangement that the parents was going to make, they can't make it no more. You know what I'm saying? Because now, she been given to you. So he has to, clear all that up with the third party, you know, in this thing. If he, so that's why it's done like that. Because like I said, we look at marriage as a business arrangement. It's only on this western side of the world we get married for out of love. And we can see it's a problem in that because, especially in our marriages, what is it, over 50% of our marriages in divorce, right? If they make it past, what, 5 years or something like that, then, that's considered, that, they have a higher success rate if they make it past 5 years, but for the most part, our marriages end a divorce within the first 2 to 3 years, right? So, and that's because we're practicing a custom that we're, as a people, is not, we wasn't, used to this type of stuff, right? And so then it says, then if the man lay with her and he should unto the damsel, he, and give unto the damsel's father 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife, because he had humbled her, meaning He broke through her defenses. You know, some women, you know, act like they don't want to give you none, but then you end up running your little game on her that she believe you, then she end up giving it to you. So he humbled her, and so now he humbled her, and he broke through that. He cannot put her away, meaning he can't just sleep with her and move on to the next woman and start dealing with somebody else. He has to take her as his wife now, right? And imagine if we had that law. That would make us a little more conscious of who we decide to sleep with. Because we know if we lay down with this woman, she's not going to just be my baby mama. She's going to be my wife, right? So we have to understand it. And this woman knows if I lay down with this man, he's not just going to be somebody I just having fun with. He's going to be my husband, right? And it says he should not put her away for all of his days. Uh, so then that's how we got down. So and so it's, like I said, because you can't, like I said, unless some type of fornication happened, then okay, you can break up with it. But we're gonna get into all of that, right? So then let's go to Genesis 2:6 real quick. Because like I said, I know, like I said, cause we have, cause I had this conversation a lot, and I know, like I said, we so infatuated with this westernized culture of how to do things that when we read how our culture is and what we did as a people, a lot of people don't want to accept it. The fact that the act of sex is marriage, because I call it. It all goes back to Stockholm syndrome, whether you believe it or not. Because on a plantation, you have to get permission from master to marry this woman, right? So, and that's essentially what you're doing when you go to the courthouse getting a certificate and some staring at some white man face. You basically asking for permission to be with your woman. That's technically what you're doing. But we didn't do that because sex is marriage, right? So this is Genesis 6:2. And the sons of Adam, and the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, meaning, us the Adamites was looking at, the other nations of women, and it says, and they took them wives, which they chose. So they saw these women and they made wives out of them, right? Let's get 2:24 real quick. And it says, therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and cleave unto his wife, and they shall become one flesh. So they become one flesh through the act of sex, right? That's how they become one flesh, through the act of sex. It says a man shall leave his father and his mother and cleave to his wife. And how do you cleave to her? When you lay next to each other in bed. The little snuggling, the spooning and all that cool stuff, right? And then it says they become one flesh through the act of sex, right? So let's get let's get let's go to Numbers real quick too. Let's go to Numbers 30:3. I mean, no, don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with having a marriage ceremony. You know what I'm saying? Because we did that. But um, because when you read the story of Mary and Joseph, I mean, that's where they was on schedule to have a marriage ceremony, right? But then Joseph and Mary, they end up messing around before their scheduled date to have that marriage ceremony. That she ended up pregnant before the marriage ceremony took place. So, and that's why, like, he was kind of embarrassed, or because he didn't want to look like they were just out here just being some young horny people. They couldn't wait. So when the Bible says that Joseph found that Mary was pregnant and he wanted to put her away, it's because like they was some young horny people, and they decided to mess around before the scheduled time for them to mess around. where they had a ceremony where all the family come together, and then he lied with her, and then you have like we read in the first chapter. I mean, the first verse I read. What was that? Like we read in the first chapter, the first verse I read was the parents will have to show and prove that their daughter never been with a man before. So with them coming together, that's would have been the thing that would have took place during that ceremony. Joseph's parents would have, or Mary's parents would have, had the proof and show that she never been with anybody, right? We're gonna get into it. So then just go to Numbers 30:3 real quick. So Numbers 30:3 says, if a woman also vow a vow unto the Lord and bind herself by the bond being in her father's house in her youth. So now this is a young lady that's still in her parents' house, right? And she has a bright idea to do whatever, right? So now this is establishing that long as this woman is a virgin, her father still has autonomy over her body in our culture. Because and a lot of people a couple of years ago gave Ti some flack because Ti went to his daughter's doctor's appointment and was making sure her hymen was still intact. So a lot of people like, why would he do that? Why would he do that? We read right here that was always part of our culture that it's the father's duty to make sure his daughter is not out here ratchet, right? But we live in a culture now where we just like, all right, whatever, it is what it is. But we didn't do that back then. So it says, if a woman also vow a vow unto the Lord and bind herself by a word, being in her father's house. It says, because especially when you get married, the ceremony of getting married, the father gives you to your husband. That's why he walks you down the aisle. That is a symbolic act of him handing him now the responsibility of taking care of that woman, right? So this reads verse 4. And the father hear her vow and her bond wherewith she have bond with her soul, and her father shall hold his peace, meaning he's in agreements with whatever she was, talking about, whatever bright idea she had. And it says, then I'm paraphrasing, you know, when I'm breaking it down, because so it's not that it's exactly an idea. So I'm just using that just for I won't be talking too much. Then it says, her father hear the vow and her bond wherewith she have bound her soul, and her father shall hold his peace, meaning he don't say anything about it. Then all her vows shall stand, and every bond wherewith she had bound her soul shall stand. Right? So the father like, all right, okay, I'm cool with that idea. But if her father disallow her in that day that he heardeth, and not any of her vows or the bonds wherewith she had bound her soul shall stand, and the Lord shall forgive her. Meaning, if the father here, the father's not okay with it, then it's a no go. And God is not gonna whatever that woman says she's gonna do or not do, God is not gonna hold it against her because her father overruled the situation and said, no, we ain't gonna do that. You know what I'm saying? So as we can see that the father has the say so over his daughter because she's in his house and she's still a virgin at this point, right? So it's not until that woman is taken by a man, a husband, where the father, loses his authority to make the plays on that. Now it's up to her and her husband on how they do things, right? So then let's get let's keep reading. Then it says, but if her father, okay, I read that. Then it says, if she had a husband, so now it's getting to if this woman is married. Then it says, if she has at all a husband when she vowed and uttered out her lips, wherewith she bound her soul, and her husband hear it, and he held his peace, at the day that he heard it, her vow shall stand, and her bonds with she bound her soul shall stand. So meaning if her husband, so now her husband, you know, is the, how to say that the man rules, that run the house, they run the household, right? And I know a lot of our people get shooken up by that idea. That's because a lot of us never had a father in their house or a real man in the house. So they shudder to think that a man is controlling anything. But it's not like in a do what I say type of thing, or ain't no I can turn a thing going on or nothing like that. It's called mutual respect, because why would, number one, why would you lay with somebody that you cannot trust that they will have your best interest at heart? Okay, that's just getting off on the wrong foot from the get go. You're gonna lay with somebody, but I mean you're not, but you can't trust that they have your best interest. You got your priorities messed up, right? That's why we read, and we went over earlier about how with sex being marriage, and then if we practice that understanding, how that would make us more choosy. How that song go, choosy lovers, right? That'll make us more choosy on who we decide to lay with, because we would know if I sleep with this person is now my wife. I can't disrespect her. I can't, you know, cheat on. I mean, go put, go find somebody else and get adultery. I can't do none of those things, right? We will understand that. So, and vice versa, right? If a woman knows she lays with a man, she can't just go around just thinking she just having fun. That is her husband, right? So it says, but if her husband disallowed her on the day that he heard it, then he shall make her vow which she vowed, and which she uttered with her lips, wherewith she bound her soul, none effect. And the Lord shall forgive her. Meaning, now the husband, I mean, hold on 1 second, y'all. So now the husband, is have the final say so on, like, you know, why this thing keep falling? Hold on, y'all. 1 second. 1 second. 1 second. All right, got technical difficulties. So yeah, no, my bad. So back to what I was saying, right? So now the husband has the final say so. Like, not to say that because a lot of people get this twisted. So I gotta I have to preface this. Um, it's not to say that the woman opinion doesn't matter. Of course, you come together and you decide things as a family, but whatever, but it's, the man decides, okay, if that's a good idea, okay, all right, that's cool. That's what we're gonna run with. You know what I'm saying? So that's called order. Because that's how we keep the family structured and the family order going. Because we always talk about how the family structure is broken, but nobody wants to do the proper things to get the family structure back in order. Because we look at it as taboo instead of thinking like this is what we have to get back to. The family structure, when family used to last, you know, for generations and stuff. Instead of these splinter families that we living in now. You know, where the father live across town somewhere, uh, and the mama all the way over here. So we trying to break what we call these generational curses, right? So, and this is how we used to get down when we was functioning as a nation, right? Before the whole everything came and destroyed our whole family structure, right? Because, like I said, we come from and the better understand this, like we come from a arranged marriage culture, right? I mean, sure, like I said, we just read the example in in 22 and 28 where if you meet a chick out and about, you're out somewhere and you see a female and you hollering at her and then y'all get together that way. We read that, so we did that also. But generally, it's a arranged marriage type of thing, and then it's rules to how this go about, right? And it's reasons, because when you get into the laws, deeper into the whole uh, civil laws of our people, like I said, like a woman, you're not allowed to just have sex with a woman and don't take care of her and don't be there for her and make her your wife. You know, you're not allowed to and a woman is not allowed to just think that she just having fun with this guy and that guy and that guy, right? That's not how it goes. But we've been hearing this so-called monogamy type of culture of America, where they actually tells you that you can go and spend all these X amount of years having sex with different people. Then when you get in your 30s, you know, now you want to get married to somebody. When from the beginning, the first person, and this is where a lot of people get messed up at, or they don't understand. Because according to our culture, whoever that person you have sex with, that is your mate. You know what I'm saying? Because God brought y'all together. So, and it's a reason why some of us, for the most part, have strong feelings for our very first person that we lay down with, because that's a bond that was supposed to be there. You know what I'm saying? But since we raised in a society where we don't practice certain type of behavior, and we look at the fact of how many people we can have sex with in a X amount of time as being uh, uh, as being championed, so we don't look at the whole uh, moral aspects of how things should go, right? So where am I? Wait, boom, boom, boom. Then so then if her husband just allowed her, okay, we read that. So just get the last one. Then it says, but if a vow of a widow and her that is divorced. So now let's get into a single woman. Whether she's single because she's a widow, or she's single because she got divorced, right? So it says, uh, wherewith they have bound their souls shall stand against her. Let me read it right. Uh, every every vow of a widow and of her that is divorced, wherewith they have bound their souls, shall stand against her. So, meaning, if she makes any decision, she's gonna be held accountable for what she made. So she don't have to worry about what some nigga gotta say or what her father gotta say, because she's no longer, you know, she's no longer under her father's responsibility, because she's no longer a virgin anymore, and she's no longer under the responsibility of her husband because she's single. Rather, she's single because she got divorced, or she's single because of her being a widow. And keep in mind, because I know like those two terminologies right there can throw some people off. But keep in mind, in our culture, there's no such thing as boyfriend and girlfriend. So when I say divorce or widow, that means what I said, like far as well, what the Bible says, they lay down with each other. So that's the act of the consummation of the marriage. So now they're husband and wife. Then whatever reason they end up splitting, now she's single again. Okay, because no such thing as boyfriend and girlfriend. in our culture, right? So then, so now let's go to Corinthians, right? Go to First Corinthians 7 and 9. So we'll start at 8. So like I said, so we gotta understand these concepts of our culture and our history, because like I know it might sound such a foreign concept to us, but like I said, when you get into the spirit of the whole law, it teaches you to be disciplined. That way, you won't be out here just trying to be laid out with every Tom, Dick, and Harry, right? It teaches you discipline because you will know, if I lay down with this person, in God's eyes, this is my husband or that's my wife. Then if I go try to mess with somebody else, then I would be called a adulterer in the eyes of God. He's not looking at it as, oh well, they're just having fun. Let them have fun. Let the humans do what the humans do. That's not how God look at it. Because for His people, He gave laws, right? How to conduct ourselves. He didn't give this to everybody else. He gave this to the Israelites and told the Israelites, this is how I want y'all to do. Then what we do, we agree to it. That's why it's called the covenant, right? You know, because a covenant just means contract. And so now this is a 7 and we start at 8. I say therefore to the unmarried and widows, it's good for them to abide as I, because when this is Paul right here. So that Paul, he was he didn't marry because he was focusing on his ministry. So he never married. So he's just saying, like, if you if you're unmarried, you're a widow, he's saying it's best to just stay that way. But that's just his personal opinion. So that's not scripture. I know people are tripping when I say what Paul just said is not scripture, but we're reading in the Bible. I know. But Paul gonna let you know when he's speaking what God says and compared to when he's speaking to what he's saying. So it says, but if they cannot contain, let them marry, for it is better to marry than to burn. Meaning, it's better if you has to be in a relationship. It's better for you to be in a relationship than to be lusting over the fact of trying to be in a relationship, because then that's going to lead you down to a whole nother path. You might be jealous of this person because they have a nice relationship, or you might uh, end up sleeping with somebody else, man, because you want a man of your own. You might end up sleeping with somebody else, woman, because you want a woman of your own. So it says it's better to marry than to burn, meaning this burning in your lust for to be around, to be intimate with somebody, right? Then it says, and unto the married I command yet not, but the Lord. So it says, unto the married I command yet not. So now Paul is letting you know what he's about to say is what God is saying. So he's not speaking his own words right here. It says, but the Lord, let not the wife depart from her husband. Meaning, once I get, because we read that in the law, that once, if a man, once y'all become married, the man cannot put you away. Meaning, y'all can't get divorced. I can't, stop, messing around with each other. So it says, so the woman cannot divorce her husband unless her husband is out here, doing some crazy activities, right? And we're gonna get into that. Then it says, but if the but and if she departs, let her remain unmarried. So meaning if y'all split up, sometimes you hear a married couple say, yeah, but we're separated right now. So according to our culture, if you separated, that doesn't mean go have sex with the person that's been trying to hit you up in your DMs the whole time you've been married. That means you stay separate. You don't try to go and find somebody else at the time. You don't go to the bar, have a few drinks, and go home with somebody while you're separate. Because then you will be a adulterer. So then if you come back to your husband and trying to, then y'all end up getting back together. Now you're making him an adulterer because you technically became somebody else's wife during that time because sex is marriage. So when you lay down with somebody, that you become their wife or their husband, right? So then it says but if she departs, let her remain unmarried or be reconciled to her husband. So y'all split up for a minute. Then after some time, y'all took a breather from each other. Y'all come back and get back together, right? Because y'all probably worked out your problems. But that is not a time for you to go and try to mess around mess around with everybody that you can try to find in that time. So then when y'all get back together, now y'all have problems because somebody's still calling you on your phone, and your husband like, who is that? Or then or you know or your wife is like, who's that keep calling you? Then you're like, well, then now you have to spend the whole time arguing about, well, that was before. That's when we were split up. That's when we were separated. Now that's when those type of conversations come in. So now that person is not going to never really fully trust you when you're not around because they're going to figure like, well, shoot, when we were separated, you did this and that and that. So I don't know if I can trust you to go out of town. So that it avoids a whole lot of arguments and a lot of strife that we have in our relationships, as we can see when we look at it logically instead of just feeding into our own emotions and lusts that we have as people. So when you understand these laws is actually beneficial, you know, and when you understand it, it makes sense. You dig? So it says, yeah, let her be reconciled to her husband, and let not the husband put away his wife. So meaning, he can't divorce you. If y'all not getting along, if, for whatever reason, he just can't divorce you because he don't like your attitude. You know what I'm saying? You gotta figure that out. You gotta work with it. So then it says, but 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 the rest I speak not the Lord. So now Paul is jumping back to his own opinion. So just what we just read right there is the law. You can read that in the book of the laws. So now Paul is going back to how he feel about the matter. It says, but the rest I speak not the Lord. If any brother have a wife that believe not, and she pleased to dwell with him, let him not put her away. Meaning, if you with a woman and she's not really, you know, all the way on board what you got going on, or like you're, probably maybe a man of faith, and trying to, get your life right, and she's still not, all the way down with the whole thing. Paul said, don't put her away if she's pleased to be around you. Like, meaning she ain't going nowhere. She's y'all live together. Y'all, so she ain't going nowhere. Um, so it says, so this you can't just get rid of her for those reasons, right? And so in it says, but I'm gonna read it one more time. But if the rest speak, the rest speak I, not the Lord. If any brother have a wife that believes not, and she's pleased to dwell with him, let him not put her away. So again, it's like you with like I said, you with a woman, and like I said, she might not be all the way on a program, right? But she's still around. She's still with you. She's still somewhat doing her duties as a woman. So it says don't put her away. So maybe what you doing with you keeping straight on the path that you're on. Eventually that's probably gonna bring her along. So that's why you just have to sometimes be patient with certain things, right? So let's jump down to 36 real quick. No, let's jump to 39 real quick first. Let's go to 39. And it says, if the wife bound by the law, as the wife is bound by the law, long long as her husband liveth, but her husband be dead, she at liberty to marry and to do and do her will only in the Lord. So basically saying that's your husband until he die. If he not out here doing, we're gonna go over the things that you cannot do when you're married and stuff that you can divorce the person for. If he's not doing none of these things, then that's your husband until he die. If not, then you will be committing adultery, right? And adultery is a very serious offense in our culture, right? You know, where you think the so-called Muslims over there get all that stuff from? They got it from us. So adultery is a very serious offense in our culture, and of course we're here in America, so we can't carry out certain laws. But we're not going to be here in America much longer, especially when this World War III kicks off. And like I said, we already know, because we've been going through the lessons and explaining, you know, what's going on with that, what I'm saying, and how that affects us as a people, right? And of course, we're not done doing that neither. So we still gonna do more lessons on that, the current state of the world, and how that affects us now and going into the future, right? So then, let's go back up to 36. So it says, but if a man think that he behave himself uncommonly towards his virgin, meaning his young woman, because in this context, virgin just mean a young lady. If she passed her flower of age, see, then that's how we know. That's not talking about sex. It's talking about her age. And her flower of her age is when a woman starts to bloom and she starts to come into her womanly body. So now she's like 18, like I said, between 18 and 25, right? It says, but if a man thinks he behave himself uncommonly towards his virgin, if she pass the flower of her age and need so required, let him do what he will. Uh, he sinneth not, and let him and let them marry. Right? Hold on one second. So I'm read it one more time though. It says, but if any man think that he behave himself uncommonly towards his virgin, if she pass the flower of her age and need so required, let him do what he will. Uh, he sinneth not, let them marry. Right. So he says, you can, marry this woman. Right. And then it says, nevertheless, he that stands steadfast in his heart, having no necessity, but have power over his own will, and have so decreed in his heart that he will keep his virgin do it well, right? So it says, stay with your woman, right? You know what I'm saying? Don't be trying to, find any reason to get rid of her. Stay with your woman. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of times we would just get mad at our women for whatever reason, and then we just quick to just throw her off, right? And you got to understand we have laws against that, like we went over. You cannot just have sex, because we are the children of God, right? So we are the sons and daughters of God. In the Bible, and God loved his daughters, right? So you cannot just treat the black woman like whatever, right? Because that is a daughter of God. So you can't just have sex with her and just go and try to find how many of her friends you can have sex with. That's not what we do, you know, because we have to treat our woman with a certain amount of respect. And you just can't get mad at her for whatever reason and want to, trying to figure out reasons to leave her, right? It says, nevertheless, he has standeth steadfast in his heart, having no necessity, but have power over his own will, and have so decree in his heart that he will keep his virgin and do well. Right? It says, so then that he give her in marriage, uh, doeth well, but he that give her not in marriage do better. So now what this is talking about, like I said, so this is kind of like Paul still speaking his own mind right here. So, but this is kind of like you might meet that one woman that got all those brothers, and her brothers don't want her to deal with nobody. You know what I'm saying? Like every dude that come around their sister, they trying to fight them. You know what I'm saying? So this is what Paul's saying. Like, Paul, like, man, if you don't want to give her up to nobody, that's cool too. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, that's because it's coming. Paul, he's speaking from a single point of view because Paul, he's not concerned about having no relationships. So you got to understand also too, like the spirit that's being spoken into, right? So so let's get it again. Let's go to so so then it says yeah. So yeah, so that's basically what he's saying on that, right? So it's like saying that if you stay with your woman, you know, don't try to look for any reason. Then it was also getting into like people that you know, like the father or the brothers, what I'm saying? Like, basically talking about protecting the woman, right? But then it's also talking about too, like, how those, like I said earlier, about some guys don't want their sister to mess with nobody, right? But let's go back to let's go to Genesis real quick again. Let's go to Genesis 3:16. Boom, boom. So now this is Genesis 3:16, right? And it says, unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conceptions, and sorrow thou shalt bring forth children. So it's talking about how women experience birth pains and the labor pains that they have when they're having children, right? Then it says, and thy and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee, right? So meaning, like I said, the how the phrase goes, the man of the house, right? So so meaning, saying you were gonna cleave to your husband, and he's gonna be the man of the house, right? So and that's the order of the relationships, But like I was saying earlier, we fell so far out of the whole concept of what a relationship is, that we don't understand, like, it sounds foreign to us when we talk like that. So you have women that always say like, well, if I find the right man to submit to, then I'm going to submit. But and that's another thing. We take these words and we don't, you know, actually understand the whole diameter of the whole word. We hear the word submit, and then we just think it's all about do what I tell you to do type of stuff. But no, submit just means don't be combative with a person. Don't be trying to go back and forth. If this person pulling this way, don't be pulling that way. You know what I'm saying? That's all it means. It doesn't mean do what I say and do it now. It means don't be combative. Don't be argumentative. That's what it means, right? So let's get a 1 Samuel 25 real quick. Let's go to 25 and 39. So now it's start at 38, and it so this is David. It's getting into David, right? So now this is a cold story. So it says, and it shall come to pass uh, 10 days after the Lord smote Nabal, and he died. And David heard that Nabal Nabal was dead, and he said, "Blessed be the Lord." So now, so David is praising God that he found out that this man died, but only because at the same time, I guess David was, feeling the chick that dude was dealing with, and but you know what I'm saying. So, um, but like I said, so David couldn't get with her because that's her husband, and the only way a woman can be with another man if he died or if he commits some type of fornication, right? So it says, so when David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, "Blessed be the Lord that he had pleaded the cause of my reproach from the hand of Nabal," right? Because Nabal was trying to kill him too. You know what I'm saying? So hold on, scratch that. So it wasn't that necessarily that David was trying to get with old girl, but so take that back. So it was because Nabal was trying to kill him, right? And so it says, so yeah, pleaded my cause of my reproach from the hands of Nabal, and kept his servant from evil. For the Lord have returned the wickedness of Nabal upon his own head. And David sent and communed with Abigail to take her to him to wife. Right. So now David, sent a little message to Abigail, which was Nabal's wife, before he died. Right. It says, and when the servant of David came to Nagel to uh, Carmel, uh, they spake unto her, saying, David sent us unto thee to take thee to him to wife. And she arose and bowed herself on her face to the earth, and said, Behold, let thy handmaid be a servant to wash the feet of the servants of my Lord. So she was kind of happy at the gesture of David wanting to come and take her. Let's see how happy she was, right? So, um, says, and Abigail hasted. So she got, when she found out that David wanted to be her man, she hasted, meaning she hurried up and got herself together, right? Then it says, she hasted and arose and rode upon a ass, which is a donkey, with five damsels of her, and with five damsels of her which went after her. So she not only did she got herself together, she brought five more women for David, right? Because we come from a polygamous society as well. So, um, like we like I said, it's arranged marriages, and then we also practice polygamy, right? Now, me, like I say this all the time. Now, me personally, I don't practice polygamy, but I'm not against those who practice it. As long as they're doing it in a righteous way. So she brought five more women with her, right? Then it says, and boom, boom, boom. It says Abigail hasted and arose and rode it upon a ass with uh, damsels of her. Uh, five damsels of her went after her, and she went after the messengers of David, and became David's wife. And David also took. Uh, so he also took uh, Albinoin of Jezreel, and they were also both of them his wives. So he took two wives in that instant. So and then it says so David went and grabbed him scooped up two women real quick, and they became his wife, right? Because again, as on the man side of the whole thing, right? Now, if a man has sex with a woman, that she becomes his wife, but she has to be single, right? She can't be already in a relationship with somebody. She has to be single, because then he'll be committing adultery. So then, if he meets another single woman and he has sex with her, she also becomes his wife. And the Bible says when stuff like that happen, you cannot treat the different wives different because you might like this one more than the other. So then you want to treat this one different, you know what I'm saying? And or you got kids with this woman, but you treating the kids different because she like this wife better. You can't do that. You have to treat them equally, right? So now he got two wives, right? Well, he got more than two wives, but in this instance here, he grabbed up two. Then so let's get Genesis 16 real quick. So what we doing? We going through the culture and seeing how these certain things played out, right? And so we see that we haven't mentioned nothing about a marriage ceremony. It's just that we're understanding that the act of sex is marriage, and like I said, so when you have that understanding again, when you have that understanding, instead of just looking at it like, oh, that's a foreign concept, just think about what it does. It causes you to be more choosy on the people that you lay down with. You're going to want to investigate them a little more before you decide to give yourself to them. Then you're going to treat yourself a little more special before you give yourself to them. Because once you give yourself to this person, you are bound, to them. You know, and especially if you believe in God, if you're a God fearing person, you got to understand like this is how God said we should behave ourselves. You know, um, so it's 16 and start at 1. Now Sarah, Abraham's wife, bare him no children, and she had a handmaid of an Egyptian whose name was Hagar. And Sarah said unto Abraham, Behold, now the Lord hath restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, and go unto my maid. So now our foremother Sarah, at the time, she wasn't able to have children at this time, even though she ended up having some children, but she ended up having Isaac, right? So so now she said, I can't have children, but go into my servant, and then if when she has a baby, then I will take that baby as mine. So that's what we would call today a surrogate mother, right? So they back then they practiced surrogacy. I don't know if that's a word. They practiced surrogacy back then, but it was done like how we read now. So she had her slave, her servant, to lay with Abraham. So then whatever child that is produced, it belongs to Sarah. And I know a lot of our women won't do that, but when you look at the brat in her situation, they technically did a surrogate because they had some man, a white man at that, you know, put his little nasty, sticky stuff in her, and now she's pregnant. But so, but with her so-called girlfriend's egg put inside of her. So we do a variation of this whole surrogate stuff today, right? So then it says so Sarah said to Abraham, Behold, now the Lord has restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go into my maid. It may be better that I have obtained children by her. And Abraham hearkened to the voice of Sarah, and Sarah, Abraham's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian. And after Abraham had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband and Abraham to be his wife, because the act of sex is marriage. So she gave Hagar to him to lay with. So once he laid with her, now that's his wife, right? Like we just read here. So it says, and he went into Hagar. Because remember, we were saying we're going to see these words went into or he knew. So those are all euphemism for the act of having sex. It says, he went into Hagar and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. So now, so even though we practice this, it doesn't mean that our women wasn't jealous sometimes, because now we see that Sarah is kind of being a little jealous, because now she's like, dang, I've been having sex with this man all this time. I couldn't get pregnant, but now she's pregnant. So now she's probably looking at it like something is wrong with her, that she can't get pregnant, but now this woman got pregnant, even though technically the reason for her getting pregnant was so that baby to be given to Sarah, right? But then too, when you get into the story of this, Hagar started kind of, antagonizing her a little bit, right? Kind of making her feel bad for not being able to have a baby. She started, bragging. You know how women do when they, what a man that they love and they pregnant and their friend is over there, single and salty. So they be showing their belly and talking about all this good. You know how women do, right? So that's what Hagar was doing. So she's kind of making Sarah feel bad. So when you get into the whole story of that, right? So now let's get to Deuteronomy 22 and 23 real quick. Then it says, if a damsel that is a virgin be betrothed unto a husband, and a man find her in the city and lie with her. So now this is talking about a woman that is promised to somebody, right? Meaning her father has promised her to somebody, right? But then what happened? It says, uh, and a man find her in the city and lie with her. Meaning, like I said, they meet. He's talking to her. He probably maybe they work together. You know what I'm saying? And they spend a lot of time together. Then he end up, then they end up sleeping with each other. What happens? And it says, then he shall bring them both out to the gate of the city, and they shall be stoned, and they shall be stoned. Them with the stones that they died, and the damsel, because she cried not, being in the city. Because when you promise to somebody, you're technically already married. So if you go and have sex with somebody else, that's why the other accounts that we read, when we read it in the law, it says if she's not betrothed, if she's not promised. But this woman is promised, meaning her father and the other family came together. They already said this is what it is. We're gonna combine our assets together as a family. So, like I said, because marriage is a business relationship. You know what I'm saying? Business and political, right? And like I was telling a friend of mine, only poor people get married out of love. You know what I'm saying? And then, like I said, we see the results that more than 50% of our marriages end in divorce because we following this westernized concept of what relationships is instead of getting back to our own culture, right? And where we used to court and figure each other out. You learn a person first before you start laying down with them. You just can't control yourself. So now you want to, you only knew this person for a few days, and now they already in your bed. You get to know the person first, before you lay down with them, right? And that's what we don't do. We don't get to know people first. So then we find out this person is crazy in their range, and now we want out, you know, but it don't work like that. So it says, because he had humbled her, his neighbor's wife, so uh, that will put away evil among you, because that's evil. Because now you perpetuating this negative activity where we go around sleeping with each other, women, and to the point where we have it now. Now we're making songs and bragging about sleeping with other people, women. You got women making songs and bragging about sleeping with, taking somebody else's man from them, right? But in our culture, that is a offense that is punishable by death. That's why I said earlier that adultery in our culture is a very serious offense, right? And we see that happening now. Like, for example, trying to think of I'm trying to think of a occasion. It'll come to me, but I was trying to think of a certain, like, somebody that we'll probably all know, like a celebrity or a famous something that happened in the news that something similar to this. Um, like I said, it's a very serious offense, right? Then let's get uh let's get Leviticus real quick. Okay, Leviticus 18 and 24, right? So it says, defile not yourselves in any, defile not ye yourselves in these things, for all in all these things of the nation are defiled, which I cast out before you, right? So, because God is telling us not to do what the other nations do, and that's what we do here in America. We do what they do instead of keeping our own culture. You know, we think we got some type of culture, but they don't. But we don't understand that our culture, is still is tailored and given to us, right? And so that's why we promote all this sex, drugs, and and violence in our music and our culture in our movies and all that stuff, right? Because like I said, we didn't behave like that because we understood, our ancestors understood the importance of a man and woman together. But nowadays we don't understand the importance of a man and a woman together because it's just like whatever to us. But people back in the day, people would go to war over their woman, right? You know what I'm saying? People, you think people like I said, people go crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like many wars started over women, right? So we gotta value our women. Even like we hear stories here in America. The white people would say like a black person like Emmett Till. The man they said he whistled at some little white tramp. They done did and they did what they did to Emmett Till. Uh, Rosewood. They done burnt the whole city down in Rosewood because they said some dude touched a white woman's butt or something like that. So that's if we only value our women. I'm not saying we should commit acts of violence. You know what I'm saying? But only if we value our women, right? Like like how we used to. Then it says, yeah, that was funny. I did the whole this on that, but I'm not advocating violence though, right? Um, but yeah, so where we at with it? So Leviticus 18 and 24. So it says, defile not ye yourselves in any uh, of these things, for in all things the nation are defiled, which I cast out before you. So like I said, we're not supposed to get down like that. You know what I'm saying? Certain things that we should not be doing. Let's start back up there. Let's go to 18 and 6, right? So now we get into fornication. What is fornication? Because like I said, we go to church and the church will tell you, oh, you're fornicating, right? And then, so you would think just having sex is fornicating. But we already read and should, at this point, establish that sex is marriage. So sex is not fornicating. But we're going to see what fornicating is, right? Because they say, like I said, they'll use the word fornicating. They use unmarital sex, babies out of wedlock. So we're going to see what that is, right? Let's go to start at 6. Leviticus 18 and 6. None of you should approach to any that is near kin to him to uncover nakedness. I am the Lord. So incest. This is talking about incest. Incest is fornication. The nakedness of thy father or the nakedness of thy mother shall not uh, uncover. Uncover. She is thy mother, and thou shalt not uncover her nakedness. So you can't go around having sex with your father. That is called incest. That is fornication. You can't go around having sex with your mother. That is called incest. That is fornication. Like how we used to see on Jerry Springer. They had little families come on and talk like that. And say those things. That is called incest, right? The nakedness of thy father's wife thou shalt not uncover, right? So you cannot go and have sex with your father's wife. So say like your father got a woman that's different than your mother, and you can't be like, well, that ain't my mama. So like how in this corrupt culture we got now, the father and the son they like to share women sometimes, or the father, you know, So no, you can't do that. That's called fornication. We're reading what fornication is now. So it says, the nakedness of thy sister, the daughter of thy father, or the daughter of thy mother, uh, whether she be born at home or born abroad. So you can't have sex with your sister, even if she's your half sister. You can't be like, well, we never grew up in the same house together, so it's cool. No, you can't do that. That's called fornication, right? Having sex with your sister or having sex with your brother, that's fornicating, right? Says the nakedness of thy son, thy daughter, even if they, even their nakedness, thou shalt not uncover, for there is uh for there is thy own nakedness. So you can't do that. Can't be with your sister. A brother and sister can't have sex. It's a no go. The nakedness of thy father's wife, daughter, begotten of thy father, she is thy sister. Thou shalt not uncover her nakedness. So you can't go have sex with your father's daughter, even if y'all don't have the same mother. Can't do that. So incest is fornicating. Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy father's sister. So you can't have sex with your auntie. You know, you, that is fornicating. It says, she is thy father's near kinswoman. Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy mother's sister. So you can't have sex with your sister, with your mama's sister, your auntie on your mama's side, right? It says, for she is thy mother's kinsman. Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy father's brother. So you can't have sex with your uncle. That is called incest. That is fornication. Thou shalt not approach to his wife. She is thy aunt. So you can't have sex with your uncle's wife because that is your auntie, right? Because like I said, like a lot of us, grew up in some weird households and a lot of craziness go on. I understand. I mean, I don't, but I understand. I heard stories, but you can't do that. Because that is called fornicating, right? It says, "Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of thy daughter-in-law." So you can't have sex with your daughter-in-law, right? That's your son's wife. You cannot have sex with your son's wife. But like I said, we live in a society where you know people talk about father and son sharing a woman together. That's craziness. It's called fornicating, right? So it says, uh, it is thy brother's nakedness. Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of a woman and her daughter. Meaning you cannot sleep with a mother and her daughter. Some guys is into that. Some guys want to have sex with the mother, then they want to go have sex with the daughter. You can't do that. That's called fornicating, right? You don't do that. And it's says, thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of a woman and her daughter, neither shalt thou take her son's daughter, or her daughter's daughter. So you cannot take, you know, your grandchild, basically what it's getting into. You can't have sex with your grandchildren. There's a lot of creepy old men that be trying to have sex with their grandchildren. You can't do that, right? Um, for they are her nearest kinswoman. It is wickedness. What did the Bible say? It is wickedness, right? That is fornication. So as we see so far, fornicating is not just having sex and not married or having children out of wedlock. We're seeing that fornication is these different variations of incest that we're seeing. Having sex with your father, having sex with your mother, having sex with your brother, having sex with your nephews, and your uncles and aunties, right? Your nieces. You don't do that, right? It says, neither shall thou uh, neither shall thou take a wife to her sister to vex her. So you cannot have sex with your woman's sister, right? And to vex her, because that's going to vex her, meaning that's going to commit jealousy. That's going to be, uh, that's going to be some. That's going to increase whatever civil rivalry they got going on between each other. Now, on the flip side, because this is twofold. Now, if your wife dies, then you end up getting with her sister. Okay, but if as long as her wife is alive, and I'm not saying that's of course in our society that's not the normal thing. That's not looked at as a norm. That's gonna be kind of awkward anyway. So in our society, yeah, that's awkward to if your wife died, now you're messing with the sister. So, but I'm just saying that I'm just showing you the different ramifications of the law that you cannot have sex with your wife's sister, you know, because then that's a no-no. But if your wife dies, then it's okay to take the sister as a wife. But like I said, I know in our society that that's not a norm. That's not what we do. I'm just saying. I gotta tell you what the law is. I gotta lay it all out there. So it says, where I'm at, boom, boom, boom. Yeah, because to vex the sister, to uncover her nakedness, beside the other in her lifetime, right? So meaning, long as your wife is still alive, you cannot be with her sister because, like I said, that's gonna create jealousy and strife, right? Then it says, also, thou shalt not approach unto a woman to uncover her nakedness, as long as she put a part of her unclean. Let me read that again. Also, thou shalt not uh, approach unto a woman to uncover her nakedness, as long as she is is part is a part for her uncleanliness. Meaning, you can't have sex with a woman that's on her period. A lot of niggas like, what I don't know what the slang is, but I know it's nasty, and some niggas is into that, and that's crazy. You're not supposed to have sex with a woman on her period. That is nasty. That is fornication, right? It says, moreover, thou shalt not lie carnally with a neighbor's wife to defile thy neighbor thyself with her. So you cannot sleep with your neighbor's wife. That's called adultery, and that's fornicating, right? So you cannot go around wait till your neighbor leave to go to work, and you sneaking in through the back door somewhere. You can't do that. It says, and thou shalt not let any of thy seed pass through the fire of Molech, neither thou shalt profane the name of, of God. I am Yahweh, right? So you cannot, what they would call child sacrifice, but nowadays we would say abortions. I know a lot of people that's a sensitive topic. So, but who cares? You can't do it because God said you can't do it, right? And ultimately, you're serving the god of Molech, like it said, right? And it says, "Thou shalt not lie with mankind, uh, as womankind. It is abomination." So, homosexuality, that is fornicating, right? Neither shalt thou lie with any beast to defile thyself, wherein neither shalt thou a woman stand before a beast and lie down there to it. It is confusion. So you can't have sex with animals, right? That is bestiality, they call it. So no homosexuality, no bestiality. That is fornicating, right? Defile not yourselves in any of these things, and all these things the nations are defiled, which I cast out before you. So God is telling us these other nations get into those type of things. But us being Israelites, we don't do these things. This is not how we operate as a people, right? So these are our laws that we have to govern ourselves and our nation, right? It says, in the Lord, in the land is defiled. Therefore I do visit the iniquity thereof upon it, and the land itself vomit out the inhabitants. Ye shall therefore keep my statutes and my judgments, and shall not commit any of these abominations. What did God call all these things we just read? Abominations. right? Abominations, um, neither uh, neither any of your own nation nor any stranger sojourner among you. So this law goes for anybody that, like, if you in our country, in our land, this is what the law is. So just like when somebody moved to America, they're subject to the laws of America. They can't just come to America and do their own damn thing. So when you come to Israel and we in power, you can't come to our land just doing any old thing, right? Whether you're a stranger, meaning you're a foreigner, or or you one of us, right? So that's the law of the land. Let's get Judges real quick. So this is a real this is a comprehensive breakdown of what marriage looked like in the Bible. So we see fornicating, like I said, is not to do with just having sex, because sex is marriage. The act of sex is marriage. You know, it has nothing to do with what they say premarital sex, uh, children out of wedlock. So that's not fornicating, right? So we see that. Let's get Judges 11 real quick. Judges 11 and 1, right? So, cause we gotta understand, like I said, the society we live in, they promote all this promiscuous behavior, and our people just eat it all up like it's cool, right? But because we don't know our own culture, our heritage, we don't know how we used to get down before they kidnapped us and brought us to this shore, of America, right? We don't know. So we see how our people used to get down, right? And like I said, if you was with us last week, how we went over that he is our God only, what I'm saying? Because we did a video about, the God of the Bible and who is he the God of, right? So this whole book from Genesis to Revelation is only dealing with us and how God want us to, you know, behave ourselves, right? For the lack of better terms. So now this is Judges 1. And like I said, the church is not going to read these things. The church, they're going to tell you, you know, they're going to tell you you know, what they've been telling us. Oh, this is you're fornicating, or they're going to say if put that nigga out for whatever reason. But the Bible says you cannot divorce unless it's one of those things that we just read. Those type of fornicating activities. Then you can divorce him. You can't divorce him because you don't like his attitude, or you don't like whatever, right? Or he can't divorce you because he don't like your attitude or whatever. It gotta be because you out here sleeping with your brothers and sisters, your uncles and aunties. You having sex with animals. You know, you're doing uh, some type of homosexual activity. Those are grounds for divorce, right? So now this is Judges 11 and 1. Now in Japhet, the 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 Gili the Gileonite was a mighty man of valor, and he was the son of a harlot, and and Gili and 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 Giller. He was a son of a harlot, and Giller being a begotten of Japhet, and and Gilly's Gilly's wife bare him a son, and his wife uh, grew up, and his wife's son grew up. So this man had Japhet had a baby by a prostitute, and then he also had a baby with his wife, right? So you see, they making a differential between the prostitute and his wife, right? I know y'all hear that in the background. Don't worry about it. Um, so you see the differential between the prostitute and his wife, right? So because a prostitute get paid for sex, right? So that's why it's not no fault of her. I mean, not what I mean, no fault of her, meaning like it's not like they're not calling her his wife also because she's you know money for sex, prostitute, right? So it says, and Gilead, his wife bare him sons, and his wife son grew up, and they trust and they thrust out Japheth and said unto him, Thou shalt not inherit in our father's house, for thou art a son of a strange woman. So Japheth so Japheth, so they was treating Japheth a little different because his mother was a prostitute, you know, so but Japheth ended up becoming a mighty judge of Israel, you know, even though they treated him like he wasn't nothing, right? So like I said, so you see the differential between because they didn't call the prostitute his wife, they established that she was a prostitute, right? So then let's go to Genesis 29 real quick. Go to Genesis 29 and 5, right? Let's see. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, yeah, 29 and 5. It says, And he said unto them, Know ye Laban, the son of uh, Nahor? They said, We know him. And he said unto them, It is well. And he said unto them, It is he well? Is he well? And he said, Yes, he is well. And behold, Rachel is his daughter, cometh with the sheep, right? So now let's talk about our ancestor Jacob and when he met his wife Rachel and Leah, right? So so just read it a little bit, and it says, and he said, Lo, it is high day, and so you can get down, hold on, because when you get into the story, Jacob was in love with Rachel, right? And so he was doing some work for Laban, he can have Rachel, right? So so Laban said, okay, well if you work for me for 7 years, then you can have Rachel, right? So then he's like, all right, okay, I'll work for you for 7 years, you know. And so then I'm trying to get the account real quick. Hold on. Boom, boom, boom. Hold on one more time. Hold on. Just trying to find where to pick up the story at where I'm trying to get the point. So it says, and Laban had two daughters. The name of the elder was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. And Leah was tender-eyed, but Rachel was beautiful and well-favored. So what I mean by Leah was tender-eyed, meaning she was more shy. You know what I'm saying? She wasn't outgoing as Rachel. She was a little more reserved. She was a little more shy. Then it says Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed unto him but a few days, for the love he had for her. And Jacob said unto Laban, Give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled. I may go into her. And, and Laban gathered together all the men of the place and made a feast. And it came to pass in the evening that he took Leah his daughter and brought her into him, and he went into her. So Laban put a little switcheroo because you read the account. He dressed, kind of had Leah covered up or whatever, right? Had the little veil on, right? Because the women wear the veil in the marriage thing, right? So then it says Laban gave unto his daughter Leah Jephthah the maid for a handmaid, and it came to pass, behold, and it came to pass that morning, behold, it was Leah, and he said to Laban, What is this thou hast done to me? I did not serve thee for Rachel. Did I? He said, didn't I serve you for Rachel? Wherefore has beguiled me. So basically, when you get to the story, that he, like I said, he covered Leah up so her face was with the veil on. You know, Jacob probably was a little drunk or whatever, right? So then he ended up laying with Leah instead of Rachel. So now Leah is his wife, right? So but then Lavan ended up knowing that he was bogus for it. Then it says, Lavan said it must not be done in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Fulfill her week, and I will give you thee also for the service which thou hast served me yet another 7 years. And Jacob did so and fulfilled her week, and gave him Rachel his daughter to wife also. So it says gave Rachel his daughter. That's the point. Gave Rachel his daughter to wife also. So now he has Leah and Rachel as a wife. Even though they're sisters, and but it wasn't by his own doing. It was because how their father tricked them, right? So so yeah, so now that's our patriarchs of the family, right? So we see the act of laying down with somebody that causes that person to be your wife, right? So um like I said, so it says he took Rachel to be his wife also, right? So let's get Hosea real quick. I'm kind of jumping around. Let's go to Hosea. So, like I said, we see like the whole concept. Like I said, the point is being made. We're establishing the point that the act of sex is marriage. And then fornicating, we went through the different lists of what fornicating is. So we see that we're not talking about no marriage ceremony, no certificate, no rings or nothing like that. Not saying that we didn't have those things, because you could do that. But what we're seeing, that's not the standard. You know what I'm saying? Because, like I said, we got accounts where what we would do, like the man will give the woman jewelry and all that stuff, get her all decked out with the jewelry. So that was like what we would do instead of just giving somebody a ring. Because again, the ring is a whole Eurocentric idea, right? That's not part of our culture, right? That's not what we did. We gave each other gifts and jewelry, right? So let's get uh what I want, Hosea. Um, let's get Hosea. Start at chapter 1 real quick. So now it's Hosea, right? It says, I'm start at 2. So Hosea 1 and 2, it says, in the beginning of the word of the Lord by Hosea, and the Lord said to Hosea, go take unto thee a wife of whoredom. So the Most High God is telling Hosea to take him a wife that is a prostitute, right? So when you get into the whole story of this, he's he's technically using Hosea's life as a metaphor on how Israel is keep dealing with these other customs and these other nation gods and not stand with the Most High God Yahweh. We keep following other different ways, like how we're a lot of us is doing now. So he said, all right, because Hosea is a prophet, so he said, I'm going to use your life, Hosea, as a metaphor to how I feel about Israel, right? So it says, and the Lord said to Hosea, go and take unto thee a wife of whoredom, and the children of whoredom, meaning have kids with this lady, in the land, and have committed great for the land have committed great whoredom, departing from the Lord, right? So, like I said, that's why he wanted Hosea to do it, to show the example of how Israel is a following these different nations and essentially committing spiritual fornication, spiritual adultery by following these different guides, right? So let's jump to Hosea 2. Hosea 2 and 2, right? And read down to 7. It says, uh, it says, so now this is Hosea talking to his children. That so of course there's some time that went by because it takes time to have children. It says, plead with your mother, plead, for she is not my wife. So now Hosea is calling her, saying that she is not his wife. Why? Because she's out still prostituting. She never gave up her whole life. When she became a wife to this man, she never stopped hoeing. So she's having sex with everybody. And sex is what we know to be marriage. So now, but she's not his wife because now she's committing fornicating, right? Because we understood that when you lie down with somebody and you're married, you go and do all these acts. Now you're fornicating. So she's by law, she's not his wife, right? So it says boom, boom, boom. She is not my wife, and neither am I her husband. Let her therefore put away her whoredom out of sight, and her adulteress from between her breasts, right? Then it says, lest I lest I strip her naked and set her as the day that she was born, and make her uh, a wilderness, and uh, like a dry land, and slay her with thirst, right? So it's basically saying that making her, slay her with thirst, meaning like keeping her, so this is like a metaphor too for like a woman that's just out here in the streets all the time, just chasing a life, right? She just a slave for the streets, right? For that lifestyle. Says, I would not have mercy upon. Um, but let me jump down to 5. So let me jump down to 5. Then it says, for her mother has played the harlot. She that conceived them have done shamefully. For she said, I will go after my lover. So now this woman, some women might think, well, I'm just gonna go and do me. Go out here messing with these different guys. I'm out here doing my thing, right? And it says, um, where that it says, um, for their mother played the harlot, she conceived them and done shamefully. For she said, I will go after my lovers that give me my bread and my water and my wool and my flax and mine oil and my drink. So she out here dealing with these other dudes because they probably spending a little money on her, giving her little gifts and stuff, right? So she think that's cool because maybe Hosea probably ain't got it like that. So now she out there messing with these other niggas that got it. So then it says jump down to 7. Then it says, and she shall follow her lovers, but she shall not overtake them. Meaning she messing with all these different guys, but she's not gonna be able to land one of these guys because these guys know that she out here messing with all these other different guys. So a lot of women be wondering why they still single. It's because the guys that you want, they know that you out here messing with other guys. You know, cause like I said, cause guys are not stupid. They know when a woman is out here just doing other things. So a lot of women be wondering why they're still single. They can't find a man. It's because they know that it's a lot of guys out here that's probably still in your DMs, texting your phone, you know. So then when you do try to get your act together and try to find a man that you want, I mean, you done left the whole trail of burning, you know, of burning bridges behind you, for lack of better words. She says, she shall follow after her lovers, but shall not overtake them. Meaning she's not going to be able to, get a relationship out of it. It says, shall not overtake them. She shall seek them. She shall seek them, but shall not find them. Then she shall say, I will go and return to my first husband. So then, after a while, most women, some women, they're like, let me go back to my man that at least I know where he's at. He's gonna always, he's gonna be there. So then she finally gets some sense and get her a Russell West a Russell Wilson nigga, right? So she done messing with the ABs, the Antonio Browns, and now she want to get her Russell Wilson, right? So then it says I will go and return to my first husband, for then I was better. It was better with me than now. So now she's getting common sense and understanding all this hoe hopping I've been doing. It was better for me to just stay with this nigga because even though he was a Russell Wilson type nigga, but at least I was better off because he took care of the kids. He took care of me. He actually cared about me. So now she's, getting. Now she's seeing that, right? And so yeah, right. So just get just, just jump to chapter 4 real quick. 14. It says, "I would not punish the daughters," and this is why, like in our society, this is why this whole promiscuous attitude is like is uh tolerated. Because Most High, this was a punishment for Israel and how we act. You know what I'm saying? And the Most High is he's cold with it. You know what I'm saying? So he want us to feel what he feels. So and he feel like we out here prostituting ourselves by following these different religions and these different cultures of people. So he gonna make some of our women have these attributes. So we're gonna have to deal with how it feels to be messing with a promiscuous woman, and you can't seem to get her to just focus and actually be a real woman, how we would say a real woman should be. So just see what God says. It says, I will not punish your daughters when they commit whoredom, nor your spouses when they commit adultery. That's why we had this society where, like for example, Steve Harvey's wife can go have sex with the pool boy, bodyguard, and chef, then get on it and then ask this nigga for half of his money in a divorce settlement. And everybody like what? Like she the one that, you know, committed the infraction. But she has but then in this society that we live in, she can demand half of this man money when she out here committing all types of infractions. Right? So it says, I would not punish your daughters when they commit whoredom, nor your spouses when they commit adultery, uh, for themselves and separate with whores, and they sacrifice with harlots. Therefore, the people do not understand shall fall. Right? And that's the problem. We don't understand. We wonder why our women dress a certain type of way, behave a certain type of way. It's simple. When we as men stop loving whores, then that's when our women is going to stop acting like whores, right? And I'm not saying all of our women. Of course, it's a small percentage that we're talking about. We're talking about the sexy reds of the world, the Sukihanas of the world. That's what we're talking about, right? We're not talking about any self-respecting, woman out there. We're talking about the Sukihanas, the sexy reds, right? That's what we're speaking on, right? And so what I'm saying, like I said, but we, our a lot of our men, they like all that, ratchetness. So then women is trying to compete with these, with these women that's out here hoeing, and so now the average woman got to try to, just for her to try to secure a man, she got to try to keep up with the Sukihanas of the world, you know, and so then that creates more confusion in what the Bible says we should not do this type of activity because it brings forth um, wickedness in our community, right? And we see the detrimental of that type of behavior. We see how the baby mama drama, gets fextured and come out of that stuff, right? So we gotta, understand that, we cannot participate in this type of behavior, right? And then us as guys, as men, we should not, out here, because a lot of dudes spend their weekend in a strip club, take their hard-earned money that they done made, and go to the strip club and throw it up in the air. So then it's like women that's out here that's actually looking for a man, they see this certain type of behavior. There's some, not all, some they think, well, shoot, only way to compete if I push this up a little more, poke this out a little more, poke, you know, take off some of this and start being more revealing. Maybe I can keep up with these people. That's why you have a whole section of women that's dressing like strippers now. You know, like, and that's just the culture that is starting to fester. You know, they're coming about. You have a whole bunch of women dressing like strippers, right? And they don't even strip. Cause they, cause they, I was, I was gonna say, because they probably, because they physically not fit, But I'm just joking on that part. But I'm just saying, like, so we gotta understand, like, how our mentality kind of plays into this whole thing too, as men, right? So we got to get our stuff together, because then when we get ourselves together, that's going to cause our women to get it together, right? So we got to understand that part. So let's go to Deuteronomy 22 real quick. See, we're going to keep going back to the law. We got to get the law on these things. Get 22 and 13. Oh, no, okay, no, I read that, but let's get 24 and 1. When a man has taken a wife to marry, taking a wife and marry her, and it comes to pass that she find no favor in his eyes, meaning, like, you mess with this woman and now you find something that you don't like about her, right? For whatever reason. That's why it's important when we understand that in our culture that sex is marriage, that it makes you be a little more picky, a little more choosy who you decide to lay down with. You're not just out here just trying to knock everything down that you can find, because if you're a God fearing person, you know that if you lay down with this person, that is now your wife or your husband. So you can't just be out here giving yourself to everybody. It makes you a little more reserved. It teaches you discipline. So it says, but if a man take a wife and marry her, and it come to pass that she finds no favor in his eyes, because he found some uncleanness in her, then let him write her a bill of divorcement and give it in her hand and send her out of his house. So, so it's saying, like, so getting into the whole divorcement thing, right? So, but you got to understand that only reason why this whole law of divorce came about is because when we first came out of Egypt, we were complaining about each other so much, like how we do now, how we say, "Oh, women ain't shit." The women say, "Men ain't shit." So how we doing now? So back then we was complaining to Moses. So then Moses, said, "All right, look, fine. If because we just came out of slavery out of Egypt." So our minds were still kind of messed up, just like how we only 100 years out of slavery here in America. So we're still suffering from the effects, the mental slavery and the self hate and all that little other desperate mental stuff that plagues our community. So we're still all jacked up right now. So it says, so that's where how the law came about. So it's basically came through mercy, because we already read through the what in the fornicating thing, where what we can divorce the person over, right? And so let's jump up to let's go to Matthew real quick. Let's go to Matthew 19. Go to Matthew 19 and 3, right? And it says, and the Pharisees, Matthew 19 and 3, and the Pharisees also came unto him, tempting him, and saying unto him, it is lawful for a man to put away his wife for uh, forever, for every cause, right? And he said, unto them, have ye not read? So now Jesus, who we call Jesus, his real name Yahushua, have ye not read that which is made them at the beginning, made man and female, male and female, right? He says, and he said, for this cause a man shall leave his mother. A man shall leave his father and mother and shall cleave to his wife, and they shall twine. They shall twine and shall be one flesh. So when they become one flesh is when they the act of sex is how you become one flesh. So it says, but yeah, should become one flesh. And what and what for God have joined together, let no man put asunder. Meaning, whatever God bring together, no man can take apart. Because when the fact of, like I said, we come from a arranged marriage culture. So when the parents come together and they bring us together, right? And so that's an act of God. That's called, because God is in control of every living thing, every faction of life. So we think that we can, just take God out of certain situations. So the fact that y'all coming together is still an act of God, even though you're looking at it like, well, my parent want me to marry this person, and they, so that's how it came about. But it's all an act of God, right? So it says, what, what, what therefore God had joined together, and let no man put asunder. So God is not going to be able to take y'all apart, right? And when you understand too, arranged marriages last 80% longer than any other type of marriages on the planet, right? So it had to be something to it, because those are the only successful marriages. And then you think about it, some people that have good long marriages, they would tell you, oh well, I met them through my family member or a friend put us together, right? So even in those occasions, those type of relationships last a long time, right? Because like I tell people all the time, we are so damaged and so you know damaged as people. We're not fully capable of finding true love. That's why a lot of our relationships is like how they are. Because I always say that you know a lot of us need people around us that truly care about us and know us to help us pick the right person to be with. You know, you need somebody that actually knows you, that actually care about you and want the best for you to help you find a mate. Because a lot of times when we do it on our own, we end up saying women ain't shit, or men ain't shit, or you don't need no man, right? Then that attitude comes into play because we've been picking wrong all the time, right? Because us as a people, like I said, we're so damaged mentally that, like I said, we're not capable of seeking out true love, right? Because some of us never even experienced true love in a day in our life, right? So then now you're going to try to find somebody to be with when you don't even know how to love yourself. That's crazy, right? But that's what we do. So when you look at the practicality of the whole of our customs, you see it's not such a strange fringe idea that when we say sex is marriage, that once you lie down with this person, the whole arranged marriage thing, so when you start looking at the ramifications of it, the whole aspect of the whole thing, you can see the practicality in it because the numbers back it up. We just reading it from a biblical, standpoint. Excuse me, from a biblical standpoint on how things played out, right? How we did it, you know what I'm saying? And of course, like I said, this is, and of course it's not, this is, I'm making it more simple. I'm simplifying it, rather, you know, but like I said, if this was something that we practice, it would not be so hard to understand because we can see the benefits. Like, go if you at work and you know somebody that's a Muslim. Like when I mean a Muslim, I mean like the Middle Eastern, you know, people that's probably Muslim or Indian, and just ask them how long they've been married, how they got together. They're gonna tell you that their family put them together, right? And they've been together for a long time, and I bet you they got a nice car, nice house, and all that cool stuff, right? So it's just like I said, we as a people, it only makes sense that this can work for us because, like I said, especially what we've been through, because mentally we're not we're not stable enough to pick a right relationship. And I'm talking in general, you know what I'm saying? So I'm just saying, right? So where we at with it? And it says, and he answered and said, boom, boom, boom. All right, okay, we read that. Let's go to, let's jump down to 4, right? So it says, let's jump up to 4. And it says, and he answered and said unto them, have ye not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female? And he said, for this cause a man shall leave his father and mother and shall cleave to his wife, and they shall twine and shall be one flesh. Therefore, they are no more twine, but one flesh, one flesh. With but what therefore God have joined together, let no man put asunder. Uh, they say unto him, why did Moses then command to give us a writing of divorcement? So we read that earlier about the Moses said that if you find some uncleanliness, you can write them a letter of divorce, right? And it says, he said unto them, Moses, because the hardness of your hearts suffered you to put away your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. So divorce was never on the table when God decided that a man and a woman is going to be together. But like it just said, from the hardening of our hearts, because like I was explaining earlier, that when we first left out of Egypt, we were mentally destroyed. We were jacked up. We couldn't stand each other. Just like how now, when we left, we off the plantations, but we can't stand each other, right? We always talking about women ain't shit, men ain't shit. I don't need no man. Fuck these hoes. You know what I'm saying? So he was saying, so Jesus is saying, the hardening of your hearts says, the hardness of your hearts suffered you to put away your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. I say unto you, whosoever shall put away his wife except for fornication. So we read what was fornicating. We read what was that fornication. And so in which were basically incest. And incest is sex with your mother or your father, your brother or your sister, your aunties or your uncle, uh, your nephews or your nieces, right? Homosexuality, bestiality, um, those are fornicating. That is what fornicating is, right? So let's get Deuteronomy 2. Let me see that. Boom. Let's get Deuteronomy 24:2. And when she is departed out of the house, she may go and be with another man's and be another man's wife, right? So when she is divorced, she can go. Let me read it from the top. It says, when a man takes a wife and marry her and it comes to pass that she finds no favor in his eyes, meaning now he's not feeling his woman anymore because he found some uncleanness in her. Then let him write her a bill of divorcement and give it to her in her hand and send her out of his house. And when she is departed out of his house, she may go and be another man's wife. So then she can, get with someone else, right? Then it says, and if the latter husband hate her and write her a bill of divorcement and give it to her, and give it in her hand and send her out of his house, and or if the latter husband died, which took her to be his wife, the former husband which sent her away may not take her again to be his wife, because she left and found her another man. So when she slept with the other man, she became his wife. So now if you go and sleep with her, you will be committing adultery, right? Then it says, um, he may not take her again to be his wife after she is defiled, for that is an abomination before the Lord. And thou shalt not cause the land to sin, which the Lord thy God hath given thee for a inheritance. So, like I said, so if you with a woman, y'all together, then y'all break up or split up for whatever reason, then you find out that she ended up sleeping with somebody else while y'all was broken up, then you can't get back with her no more. Because now she's defiled. That's not your woman anymore. That's the next man's woman. So she's free to do whatever she want to do at that point. And if you don't believe it, you just want to say, well, that's just the Bible. That's the Old Testament. I believe a French. Don't quote me on the country, but I want to say a French or Sweden. They did a study on this. So when a woman has sex with a man, y'all exchange energies. So and a woman is like a sponge when it comes to. That's why you get a woman that had like multiple sex partners. That's why a lot of times she batshit crazy. She got all these different energies floating in her from this guy, that guy, this guy, that guy. She just emotional wreck because the Swedish scientists, I believe, or French, um, came to the conclusion that when women have sex with men, they absorb that energy from that guy. You know, so that's how you know that we're meant to, you know, how women is meant to have this one sex partner. Now, I know it sounds crazy because in the world that we live in, you know, mothers tell their daughters, "Oh, well, you're young, you're just having fun," and all that stuff. So then they perpetuate the idea of catching all these bodies. Then when you finally are old and worn out, now you want to find a man to settle down with. Then you wonder why you can't find a man to settle down with because you went around catching all these damn bodies, right? So that's just the nature of the game. So I mean, like I said, so that's basically it. That's marriage broken down in the Bible. You know, um, I know some of y'all might not, because like it's only because of the culture that we live in. That's why it sounds so foreign. It's so crazy. You know what I'm saying? But when you understand, this is how we got down as a people. We come from an arranged marriage culture, right, where the parents married you off for the most part. Then there's no such thing as boyfriend and girlfriend. Because if you sleep with that person, that is your husband, right? That is your wife. And like I said, if we understand the principles, that will teach us to be more disciplined with ourselves, so we won't go around sleeping with everybody, giving ourselves to everybody, then wondering why we heartbroken in the end, right? Because you will have time to vet that person and see what type of person that you're dealing with before you lay down with them. And that's what we don't do. We don't vet people and see what type of people that we're dealing with. And of course, I'm guilty of this myself too. You know, so that's why it's important that once we understand our culture, we get back to our culture so we don't commit the same mistakes. So, with that, I'm gonna say shalom. Hopefully, we got an understanding of what the Most High God considers marriage. You don't need no white man's permission to be somebody's husband or wife, right? You don't need no fancy ring that the white man is making all the money off of. Then they also make money off of y'all when I get divorced. That's crazy. So, but I'm not saying that you can't do it at all, because I mean, if that's what you want to do, fine. But according to the Bible, that's not required. You know, excuse me. So just the act of sex is what bring on the whole concept of marriage. So, like I said, I'm gonna say shalom, peace, and we out here.